Let's talk about money. Hi all, I'm Isrado and you're watching my travel channel where I talk all things Colombia. Today I wanted to go over another essential element of life in Colombia, and that is finance. I've talked about this a little bit in some previous videos, but I wanted to do a deeper dive on what to expect regarding things like exchange rates, notes and coin denominations, their value in the country, cost of living, along with the best way to pay for stuff. So for starters, Colombian currency is referred to as pesos. Straight away, this might trip some people up because you may be aware that several other Latin American countries also use pesos. However, in Colombia, these are specifically Colombian pesos, commonly abbreviated as COP. So you won't be able to, for instance, use Argentinian pesos in Colombia or vice versa. It's sort of like how in Australia we refer to our currency as dollars, just like the US does, but they're Australian dollars, not US dollars, so the value is totally different and you can't use one in the other country. I realise there are countries that actually share the same currency, like with Panama using US dollars for instance, but in the case of Colombia, this is their own type of peso that can't be used outside of Colombia. In terms of the Colombian peso's value, it's certainly not the highest throughout South America, nor is it the lowest. At the time of recording, $1 US is worth roughly 4,000 Colombian pesos. Now obviously this doesn't mean that Colombia is 4,000 times cheaper than the US, this is just a look at the value of the currency itself. See, in Colombia, whenever you're buying anything more than 25 US cents, you're going to be paying thousands of pesos. Now don't worry, because this is the norm, the value of individual notes and coins are set accordingly. Notes exist in multiples of 1,000, namely 1,000, which is like 25 US cents, 2,000, 5,000, which is a bit over $1, 10,000, 20,000, which is around $5, 50,000, roughly $12.5, and 100,000, around $25. So yes, unlike countries like the US and Australia, where if you want to buy something worth $100, we have a single $100 note for that, in Colombia, if you want to buy something worth any more than $25, you're going to need multiple notes. Unless it's only an extra 25 US cents, in which case you could use coins, which brings me to the country's coin divisions. In Colombia, coins are distributed as 50 pesos, roughly 1 US cent, 100 pesos, 200 pesos, 500 pesos, roughly 13 cents, and 1,000 pesos, 25 cents. So as you can tell, coins are kind of just a pain to have to use since you need a lot of them to add up to anything. Really the only use case they serve is when you're paying for something that's not rounded to multiples of 1,000 pesos and has a few extra hundred, probably most seen at supermarkets or very local businesses and services like taxis or laundries. So obviously here you'd pay most of the price using notes and then the few hundred extra or whatever using coins. As far as just buying stuff with coins alone though, this probably isn't something you'll find yourself doing too often, as there's precious little of anything worth 25 US cents or less. I mean, I guess if you bought something for $1 and you had 4 1,000 peso coins, that could work, but otherwise it's not like Australia where you go to the supermarket, for instance, and get something for $6 and you can just use 3 $2 coins. In fact, for me, I honestly never use Colombian coins at all. I just carry notes with me when needed, and if something is rounded down to the hundreds, I just pay more and get the coins as change. The result is that I have a heavy bag full of spare change that feels like a lot, but ultimately barely adds up to $10. Anyway, that was a rundown on the currency itself, but you may wonder exactly what it gets you in the country. There really isn't a simple answer to this, as from what I've found, the value of things can range a lot more than what I've seen in my home country. For instance, during my time in Manizales, I'd been having dinner at a fast food chicken joint in El Cable called Frisbee. Here you can get a meal that includes rice, beans, 2 or 3 pieces of fried chicken, coleslaw, sauce, and a drink, all for a total of around $4. If you go to the nearby fast food burger joint, El Corral, however, you'll be paying double that amount for many of their burger, drink, and fries combos. Then of course, if you go to a smaller local eatery like this empanada store down the road from memory, you can get an empanada here for like 60 US cents. Maybe even less. So yeah, clearly where you eat can make a big difference for your wallet, and these stark value differences can be found in many other things too, such as the difference in rental prices between different neighborhoods, the cost of imported snacks versus local snacks at the supermarket, and the inconsistent pricing of technology. That last one's kind of interesting, as I noticed that there's a lot of tech that's either on par with Australia in terms of its pricing, or sometimes even cheaper, which is the case with a lot of TVs, for instance. But then there'll also be tech that's exorbitantly more expensive than my country, like video games, for example. I assume that this is due to the high import costs and the fact that they're rarely bought in bulk at wholesale prices in Colombia, but it just goes to show that not everything is universally cheaper. Alright, so that's a bit about prices in Colombia, but you may be wondering how to actually pay for stuff, as in, is it better to use card or cash? Well, firstly, I'd say a lot of people in Colombia do tend to carry cash around with them, and on the whole, it's definitely more popular to use cash than it is in Australia. With that being said, I found that most of the time there'll be options for paying with card as well, at least when it comes to larger businesses like restaurant chains, supermarkets, and any of the stores you typically find in, say, a shopping mall. When it comes to smaller, local businesses though, like laundromats or isolated restaurants in more suburban areas, these places often only seem to accept cash. I should also probably say that if you're visiting Colombia for tourism and want to visit a bunch of tourist sites, you'll often be restricted to paying cash here as well. Even tourist sites where you'd expect there to be an EFTPOS machine, like the National Museum for instance, only accept cash payments, so it's better to be safe and carry a bit of cash with you if this is what you're coming for. Now, if you were to ask me personally, I don't usually carry cash around with me in Colombia unless I'm specifically planning on going somewhere where I'll need it. Usually a laundromat or to pay my phone bill at a clothes store. That said, that latter scenario is another example of somewhere where you'd expect to be able to pay by card but can't, and I only know about it from personal experience, so if you're new to the country, it might be wise to just carry cash with you most of the time to begin with until you're knowledgeable enough of where you can and can't pay by card. As I said before though, cash is definitely more prominent on the whole than in Australia. In fact, in Oz and a lot of other countries, it's kind of the opposite. Like virtually everywhere accepts card, but not everywhere accepts cash. In Colombia though, it's essentially the other way around. One other thing I'll say on this is that I haven't had much luck with tap and pay using my phone instead of my card in Colombia. I haven't tested it extensively, but in the few cases that I have tried it, it just hasn't seemed to work. So yeah, you're probably best to not rely on your phone for payments. So that almost wraps this up. Something else you might be wondering about though is whether or not you can use a debit or credit card from your home country in Colombia. Unfortunately, there's no simple answer to this as it really depends on which bank you're with. I found with my Australian card that sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and I'd imagine this may differ from card to card, again, depending on the bank you're with. The same goes for international transaction fees. Some banks may charge more than others, but there's really no one size fits all with this. That's why I've actually done another video going into detail on a specific card that I personally recommend using. It's not associated with any bank, and so it can be ordered online in many countries of the world. From my experience, it works like 99% of the time in Colombia, and crucially, they don't charge any international fees as the card is made specifically for travel. If you want to hear more about it, you can check out that video I did here. I should say, some people pointed out in the comments of that video that they've had luck using a card from their own country without any fees from their bank. And once again, this may be the case for your bank, but it depends who you're with, which is why I thought it would be easier to just give a blanket option that I know works and can be ordered in many countries. It should also be noted that whilst this company doesn't charge its own fees, you will still find there to be an extra charge from many EFTPOS machines and ATMs in Colombia as soon as it recognizes that your card isn't from a bank in the country. Same obviously goes for any other non-Colombian card you may be using. Unfortunately, there's no way around this, but I can say with the EFTPOS charges at least that the charge seems to be fairly minimal. Like it's usually only a few cents, maybe a few dollars if you're spending hundreds of dollars, but it's barely noticeable. As for ATMs, I have found the fees here to be a lot higher. Like it's not uncommon to be paying near $5 for a simple withdrawal. Interestingly though, this seems to be a fixed charge rather than based on a percentage of the withdrawal amount. So regardless of whether you withdraw $10 or $100, you'll still be paying the same amount. For that reason, it's a good idea to withdraw large amounts occasionally rather than small amounts often, as you'll be saving quite a bit in the long run. I'd also recommend withdrawing from ATMs associated with the bank Davivienda. From my experience, they seem to have the lowest ATM charges of all the banks. If you're not near one of their ATMs though, I can say from experience that foreign cards also work with BBVA and Servibanca ATMs, but unfortunately not with those from Bancolombia or Banco de Bogotá. Anyway, that'll do us for today. I hope you were able to learn something from all of this, but if there's any questions you have, leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to give you an answer. As always, you're also welcome to leave a suggestion for a future video topic about Colombia and I'll definitely consider it. Until next time though, like, subscribe, bell, and I'll see you around. Ciao!